Light, camera, action. My name is Paul, and thank you very much for responding to our invitation. Right here, we do have a number of displays, and we do have also the original document in a newspaper which shows Sherman Park to be dedicated formally on Labor Day. We've chosen Labor Day at this time here, and this one here dates back to, and I really want to make sure, it was on this case, Monday, September the 7th, 1931, actually, that the event was being held. This is why we've picked today as Labor Day, September 7th, lo and behold, 84 years later, as being the day to commemorate the dedication of Sherman Park. Let me keep it short and sweet and say that there's a gentleman here who will be providing us some comments. That particular gentleman is LSSU alumni. He is also CCHS board member, and he is also published author.
Thank you.
Mr. Bernie Arvik.
Thank you very much, Paul. Merci, mon ami.
Bienvenue.
He's the perfect MC for many occasions, but with that very slight French accent, he is really perfect for anything in the city of Sault Ste. Marie. Thank you, Paul. I want to repeat the welcome to the members of the Sherman family for coming all this way. It's really wonderful, and especially for getting this whole project in motion, having the idea. I think it's really neat, and probably past time that there will no longer be a question when people visit, why is this called Sherman Park? I'm speaking today in two capacities, and I'll keep my remarks brief too, but one as a board member of the Chippewa County Historical Society. Dan contacted us maybe as much as a year ago, something like that. And so several of us have worked with them off and on, as well as, of course, the city has, to help provide information and support to make this dedication today possible. It was a good project for us, so thank you. The second capacity I want to speak in is as a long-term resident of Sault Ste. Marie. I was born here, and so I can speak on several different age levels. I grew up here. I raised 3 sons with my wife Colleen here. I'm fortunate enough to have 2 granddaughters now growing up in the city. And so there are 3 generations that I'm a part of that have enjoyed Sherman Park. So I just want to share a couple of brief things on that. I remember it's 3.5 miles. I went on Google Earth. It's 3.5 miles from where I grew up to come up here. And I remember coming up by bicycle more than once. It was against the wind in both directions. Also had Easter Day Hill to contend with, and that was uphill in both directions because from the south side you go up Easter Day to get to the college level, come down the other side, opposite when you're going home. So against the wind both ways, uphill both ways. But I remember coming up here with a nickel in my pocket, the concession booth over there, get a candy bar, spend the afternoon on the beach. So that's a neat memory. Then as a parent, we had 3 sons who all grew up here. We didn't come up here every weekend by any means, but we were up here more than once. And I recall grilling hamburgers on one of the permanent grills there, having a hard time getting the boys in out of the water. So that's the second memory. And then the third one, I have a neat picture of my 2 granddaughters walking. I just got them from behind pumping station in the background. But that day, I think it was, the younger one, Megan, was probably 3rd grade. And there were some 3rd grade boys there chasing her with a pop can full of water trying to get her wet. Well, they never did catch her. She somehow turned the tables. She got a cup or something, got some water, and she ran them down. She got them wet. She's now running cross country. too high. So that was the first indication that she's a good runner. So this part, is there anybody here, maybe there could be a 4-generation story here, because 84 years, I mean, it's very conceivable somebody could have been up here with their great-grandchild. What a blessing it was, anyway, to the citizens of Sault Ste. Marie that Henry Sherman, the city manager at the time, had the idea this would be a great piece of property for the city to buy. They got a real deal on it. 1930, they bought it for $4,300, 75 acres, all kinds of waterfront. And so it's, like I say, just been a wonderful thing for the citizens to have. Every family could probably tell you stories like I have told. If you look, and this is the first time I've seen it, in the like chinking between the logs, there's all kinds of indications of family reunions and 16th birthday parties, and LSSU, where I spent my career, the Faculty Association had a fall kickoff every fall up here, potluck, so there's just so many things like that. So, what a great place. That's the end of my remarks.
A city manager basically is a leader, and a leader is recognized in terms of all the accomplishments that they have done. And I know that your grandfather definitely had big shoes. And to fill those bigger shoes, I'd like to call on Oliver Turner, our present city manager.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's a beautiful day. It's an honor and a privilege to do this, and happy to present some remarks that kind of summarizes Mr. Sherman's tenure as city manager and some of his accomplishments that still last through today. So on behalf of Mayor Bospis, the City Commission, and City Administration, it is a pleasure to be here today for the dedication of the boulder, plaque, and commemoration of the park. Henry Sherman came to the city of Sault Ste. Marie in 1908 to serve as an inspector and junior engineer in connection with the St. Mary's Falls Channel improvement. And later, Sherman would serve as a resident engineer during the construction of the Davis Lock, which significantly increased capacity of the locks. Without a doubt, these improvements certainly contribute to the shipping transportation network that still bolsters our economy today. So those are very significant accomplishments, of course. In the early 1920s, a common prerequisite for becoming a city manager was having an extensive background in engineering. And Sherman was to bring his own engineering experience to the city as its third city manager. Sherman served in this capacity from 1920 until 1948 and oversaw a number of projects which continue on and serve as critical community assets. Importantly, during Sherman's tenure, the city witnessed the acquisition of Sherman Park, the construction of a Fuller Community Building, the acquisition of Municipal Airport, the construction of the Ashland Street Bridge, and the implementation of a well-renowned snow removal program. Sherman also oversaw the operation of a financially efficient water system, as well as the removal of a substantial amount of debt during his tenure. Sherman cut the city's debt by $240,000 and adjusted for today's dollars, that would be over $2,376,000. He was hailed as the $1 million no man. And reducing this debt by this level, while overseeing the completion of the major projects, certainly seems to indicate that Sherman had a prudent exercise of managerial discipline and directed the investment of public funds responsibly, something I think all of our city managers across the nation should take heed of. Remarkably, these accomplishments occurred within a context of extraordinarily challenging economic and social times for the country as a whole, from the years immediately following World War I, through the Great Depression, and through World War II. At the same time, the world was becoming more industrialized, and the former structures of society gave way under the weight of history as Sherman worked to position the city for future prosperity. At the same time, the Sioux Evening News remarked that Sherman was a pioneer in the city manager movement in the country. As contemporary city managers know, the city management movement itself was born of the progressive reform era to ensure that the day-to-day operations of municipalities are professionally managed and do not become overly politicized. It is from this movement of which Henry Sherman was a founding figure that a robust code of ethics was generated that obligates city managers to act in a nonpartisan manner in service to their communities. As both a trustee of the Michigan Municipal League and an officer of the International Association of City Managers, Henry Sherman also would have understood and valued the core principles inherent to the role that an individual can play as a professional administrator within a community. William James once stated that the great use of life is to spend it for something that outlasted, and public service definitely offers this very opportunity. Thus, it is fitting that the boulder be dedicated on the same day that Sherman Park was dedicated. The city of Sault Ste. Marie can advance into the future only because of the contributions of those who have come before us, and it is obvious that Henry Sherman, as the city's third city manager and as a key member of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, contributed much to our community so that we can enjoy long-lasting assets such as Sherman Park and the Polar, as well as continue the work of constantly progressing the community into the future. Again, I'd like to thank the Sherman family for coming long distances for this event, the Chippewa County Historical Society, City Commissioner Jay Gage for being in attendance, and our Parks and Recreation Director Dan Wires, whose support has been instrumental in this, and our guests for participating in and planning for this dedication. Thank you very much for attending. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Appreciate the words of wisdom from Tony. At this point here, I would also like to comment and introduce members of the CCHS, Chippewa County Historical Society. Mary June. Bernie Arbic. Carolyn. Tom Toko. Sherry Toko. Susan James. Patty Olson. And Karen. I always say 17 or is... And last but not least, Jim. I always say Dryer, but he's not wet. It's Dwyer. At this point here, it is definitely a privilege to introduce Mr. Dan Sherman. Dan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Paul. That was very fun. And Oliver, those are amazing comments. I hadn't heard a lot of the details. I hope we can get a copy of that. But I thought I would just describe the process by which this project came about. Googling on Ancestry.com and rattling old bones one night, it was about last winter, I thought that I might look up my grandmother, Christine Sherman. And I went on the Chippewa County Historical website and went to the Ancestry or the surname part, and I didn't really find her there. I didn't find anything. And I had her obituary in my drawer, so I thought, well, let me type it up and submit it. And it was accepted. I'm not sure which person saw it and reviewed it and edited it, but it got submitted onto the website, and there was Christine's obituary. Then about a week later, I Googled Christine again, and it hit like Fort Brady, it hit the St. James Episcopal Church, like links happened. And that was very empowering, because I thought, wow, just put this website, put the obituary on the website, and it kind of made a difference. So then I thought, okay, let me try Henry. So I tried Henry Sherman, and I found absolutely nothing. I was looking for his obituary, which I did not have. I was looking for specifics on when he died. My father really wasn't exactly sure the date. It was February of '51. Nothing. I looked in the Michigan state records, death records, burial records. I looked in he was in the Order of the Elks. He was in the Masons. He was on the Rotary, say a deacon or something at St. James Church. Nothing came up. He was in the notable alumni at the University of Michigan. Nothing listed. I called the University of Michigan, nothing. It was like, so I was thinking of calling my father and asking if perhaps he and his brothers were actually orphans. And it really wasn't. Henry Sherman, I found no trace of him. But that's not completely true, because when I Googled on newspapers.com, I found over 850, almost 1,000 hits with Henry Sherman, with stories that are, some of them in the newspapers, about his work as city manager. Almost 1,000 hits. And they go from the Evening News and the Sioux to the Escanaba paper, Iron Mountain, Bar Harbor, Maine, all over the place. Stories would come up that had his name in them, so I printed them in volumes. I'm working on a side project with a book about that, which is going to go on for a while because it's a lot to sort out. But that is where the search sort of started. I thought, then I particularly was interested in the naming of the park. And I didn't find any documentation on why the park was named after Henry Sherman as opposed to Judge Sherman or Roger Sherman. And there wasn't anything that said that specifically that I could find. So I called, I think, Susan James at the library. Maybe I emailed her. I'm kind of shy. And asked if there was anything in any local file at the library. And she found, I think maybe with the help of Deirdre Stevens, the actual obituary. Well, that was my first holy grail, of which there have been many. The obituary was suddenly in my hands, and I typed that up and submitted it. And then I started to look more on the park, and she connected me with Bernie, and Bernie started sending pictures of the park. So then it seemed like something should be done, and something could be done about making the park more known that it was named after Henry Sherman. So I spoke with my father, and first we thought of commissioning a bobblehead. About having a plaque on a boulder, and Pete said that sounded good as long as it was small and rather insignificant. He was kind of like his father, just like put it down. And I called Mary June, and she gave that the green light as a start, the ball rolling. And I guess next she referred me to Dan Wire, and Dan Wires also gave it the green light, like let's send this on to Oliver Turner, and that seemed to keep coming back like this could happen. That was, I think, the end of March. And I was on the agenda with the Historical Society in April. And then by a miracle, which I think you caused the miracle, Paul, there was this amazing article in April on the Sunday paper with the whole biography of Henry Sherman, which came out on Sunday, the 12th of April, which happened to be Henry's birthday. And that might have been a coincidence. Oh, did you do that?
No,
Somebody,
that was
somebody did that. And that was the week before it was on, the subject was on the application, was on the agenda for the City Commission to consider and vote whether this idea would go. So it got to go. And then I was referred to, which I appreciate, and then I was referred to Bob St. Peters at the St. Peters Monument. And he was great. I don't know if he's here. Is Bob here?
No, he couldn't be here
No.
today.
But anyway,
He was here earlier today.
He's very fun and very easy to work with. Thought, we worked on the plaque, and he picked out the boulder, and he really made the whole thing happen technically. So then we decided, I guess, that it would be now, because of the 7th of September, that we would dedicate the park. So I have a couple stories that my father told me that Henry started his position as city manager in June of 1920. My father was born in September of 21, just the next year. Pete was out of school, back in the war, and off with Union Carbide to Niagara in 47, left the Sioux, and Henry retired in 48. So my father's entire life, plus my Uncle Jim and mostly Bud, I think, their father was the city manager of Sault Ste. Marie. They just took it for granted. It was their entire life. And so many things went on that they built water mains and water lines and sidewalks and curbs. Not the kids, but and all kinds of things went on. I came in August to look through the commission minutes from 1920. It was my idea that I would read them all the way to 48, and I got to 34, and my eyes were like jittery back and forth. But there were so many amazing things. It's a big job, first of all, a huge job. There's so many things that go on. In every meeting, the city manager has to answer like every question and be ready and prepared to promote whatever the bond or the loan or the thing is going to be, and fire people and more sidewalks and curbs and pipelines, on and on, and ice rinks and snow removal. A lot of ice rinks and snow removal. So that's been going on a long time. The big ice rink in particular. So my father told me one story that when in, I think, 1934, 33, that was being considered, the commission had asked Henry to consider purchasing or looking into the big snowball machine. So they were looking at this machine that I think is still used, but it's got like a propeller, kind of a grinder, and it puts the snow up and shoots it in a chute over the top into a truck that moves along the road, and they move along together, grinding the snow. So it was a big purchase. So Henry had to have one brought here to demonstrate. And my father, if it was 34, he would have been 13, was with Henry, and they were on East Portage Avenue, and this thing was making its way down the street. Because it was a demonstration, the latch came unattached, and the spout thing went around, and it blew the wet snow on someone's porch, and collapsed. The whole porch crashed off the house. My father thought it was hilarious, but the commissioners bought the machine anyway. I'm still using it, I don't know. And my father said, and the city had to pay for the Porsche. She said it wasn't very big. He knew exactly how big it was. And it was on East Portage Avenue. And then my father also has mentioned to me that when I think the commission asked Henry to investigate areas for an airport, the Sioux Airport, which I think now is called Sanderson. And so he found, what is it called? Sanderson. So Henry found that property, and they were grading and clearing the runways. And he put the kids, the 3 kids, in the car. They had a 29 Dodge, and like one of those big heavy station wagon things, like a gangster movie. And he ran like at breakneck speed of 40 miles an hour to test out the runways. They ran up and down the runways, testing out the grading on the runways. And I asked him when I reminded him that story last week, if the runways had been paved yet, or they were just still going over the grading. And he said, what paved? They were never paved. They were just rolled sand. So I don't know if you could land the plane now on rolled sand. But Henry decided too that snow plowing the airport was a bad idea because the troughs made by the snow plows would make drifting snow a problem for landing planes. So they got a great big wide roller and pulled it with a plow and rolled the snow on the airport. So they were landing planes on rolled snow on sand. So I was thinking of the financial responsibility, and recently I read a book by popular sort of TV money consultant Susie Ormond, and she drills these points of financial planning and fiscal responsibility, and it was all sounding like my father. Stay out of debt and provide for the future and live within your means, live within your means. And it is an old stick, I have to say, with this generation, but my father and I know Uncle Bud and Uncle Jim definitely provided for the future, never had a debt, all that stuff. And they learned that from Henry as a real life lesson. When Pete was in high school at the old Washington School with his classmates Betty Finlayson and Autumn McNaughton were in a speaking club sponsored by the Rotary. And at one of these events, Pete's subject was financial responsibility. He was in the paper, that's how I know that, because I read that. And I was reading it, it's exactly what he talked about all the time, like save money, no debt. And he said his father was sitting right in the front row with his arms crossed, looking right at him. And it was rather intimidating to have Henry Sherman like right in the front row looking at him, talking about financial responsibility. It was burned into his head. But that's, I believe, how Henry lived and how he managed, took his job seriously as he city, debt and staying out of debt and doing everything carefully financially. Whenever we would be looking at the paper at home and the Buffalo Evening News or the Niagara Falls Gazette, and there'd be something about a bond coming up, my father would put the paper down and bristle thinking about any bond that had its life of the loan longer than the time what the money was borrowed for would endure, like painting a bridge or paving a street. The street will need paving again before the loan is paid off. And it was Henry, I think, saying all that with the same old lessons. So the process of doing this project, the Shermans everywhere across the country have always been proud that the name Sherman Park has been on this beautiful park in appreciation of Henry's work. And it has been a pleasure working with the group that I've worked with since late last winter to get the project done. And so I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Oh, we have things there's more. Yeah, there's more.
Yeah. While I call on Dan and also on Oliver, I would like also to be, what is the word, reminisce, to say that I would also like to introduce one of our board members, Bob Aldrich. Also here, as Dan is a member of the municipal staffing, there's also Linda Holt from the Sioux Convention Visitors Bureau. Thank you very much, and Dan, can you please come over? And Jim, you're in spot for the turning around. And, okay, Oliver, you want to take this, and Dan, take this, and...
This was a little biography that I worked up and with Susan and Bernie, trying to edit it and get the bugs out of it. I think it's nearly perfect.
Just to maybe add a comment, if it's okay, is that when Dan was here on a visit here earlier, commented about maybe being able to put something up in the pavilion or on the pavilion or near the pavilion, and I suggested, and he agreed readily, to put something in the pavilion, and this is what this is, so that when folks come here, they'll be able to see this, and they'll be able to see who Mr. Henry Sherman and the Sherman family was all about. I think it's a great idea, Dan.
Thank you. It started with Boulder, and that was enough, but then it went on further. I told the woman that drove me from the airport that now we're thinking of changing Sanderson, that should make it Sherman Airport. We'll just keep going. But Sherman march to the locks or something.
With the frame picture that we do see here, there is also a particular boulder, which as we are going to be progressing towards the outside in the beautiful sunlight, and unveil a plaque, which is on a boulder, and it is going to be part also of a permanent monument. When I was getting ready this morning, I debated if I should split my hair right about here. But then I debated about that one, and I say, I would not have the head of a Sherman. Yeah, let's go and see the boulder. If you can reach down here, Dan.
Oh, we looked at it?
Yeah, and
Wow! Oh, that's awesome. Gee. That's amazing.
may I invite Gigi and Jonathan, and also, Nadia.
You don't want to go?
I think so. Yeah. He's done it real nice.
Great job, Dan. Great job.
Keep your memories still a tough one, so you weren't today.
Thank you very much.
All right.